What do we want our kids to learn? What skills are they going to need to compete in today's economy and today's changing world? I really think that's the key question that we need to answer as we move through the discussion here this afternoon and through the debate that we're going to have over the next couple of years about making sure that our schools are world-class schools. As a parent of two kids, one 4 who's about ready to enter the school system and one 8, my wife and I spend a lot of time talking about just that question. You know, what skills do we want our kids to have, and what's the best educational environment for them to learn those skills and really excel? And for us, it boils down to a lot of maybe some of the softer skills. We want them to develop creativity, critical thinking, innovative thinking, problem solving, the ability to transfer problem solving skills from one field to maybe a seemingly unrelated field, skills that they're going to need in their adult lives. I think the key question, this key question of what we want our kids to learn, what skills do we want them to have, was maybe missing from some of the discussion last summer. And I think we really need to, as we move forward both here this afternoon through the rest of the legislative session and then going forward to future legislative sessions, engage the folks that we represent, parents, teachers, administrators, school-age kids, in that discussion. You know, what do we need them to learn, and what system is going to best allow them to learn those skills? You know, someone I think that was involved with the education system in 1912 would probably be pretty familiar with the education system that we have now in 2012. You know, the current system that we have was designed for a totally different time in our nation's history. It was the beginning of the industrial age, factories, automation. You know, kids were taught isolated subjects, and we prioritized compliance over innovation and creativity because those were the skills that we needed at that particular time in our nation's history. We put all students in at the same time, at the same place, moved them through the system at the same pace, had them learn the same skills, and we made a concerted attempt to reduce variation and reduce individuality. Now, we all know that those things that were important in 1912 are no longer important in 2012. We know that we live in a different world today than we did 100 years ago. And I think we need to make sure that that answer to that first key question, what skills do we want our kids to learn, has changed as well. We need to acknowledge the individuality of students. Different students have different strengths, different weaknesses, they learn at different paces, and they all have different passions and interests. Teachers need flexibility and support to collaborate and individualize learning. They need to weave together subject matters and students' interests and passions to get the most out of every child, to unfold the potential of every child. Now, I've been talking about these concepts with a number of folks from my district, and one of them, a man named Dr. Trace Pickering, who spoke to the Education Committee, and I think a lot of you have talked to, gave me the example of one of his daughters who was very interested at a point in her life in being the next celebrity chef. She watched all the cooking shows, you know, wanted to compete on Chopped and, you know, open restaurants. You know, he said, think about the interest and the drive that she would have going to school every day if you had a group of teachers with different subject matter expertise weaving together a lesson plan that used her interest and passion in cooking to teach about science, to teach about math, to teach her about putting together a business plan and starting a business. She would love to go to school every day and learn those things as well. Now, I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, and it's obviously somewhat different, in fact, a good amount different than the majority of our classrooms that we have today. But we actually have 28 districts in the state of Iowa that are already using some of these principles. They're putting those principles into practice. Each has developed its own model of lesson plans and teacher supports and assessments, using resources in each of those districts to put together their own model. And that's really the issue that this amendment and the section of the bill that this amendment goes to addresses. It makes it easier for school districts to move to more individualized learning, to more individualized lessons planning, really harnessing students' interests and getting them ready, getting those skills ready that they're going to need in today's economy. So the amendment, current law requires a school district to get a waiver annually to do this kind of competency-based assessment. And there's no set of resources at the state level available to districts that want to move down that road. So the amendment and the language that the amendment goes into in the bill, one, gets rid of the waiver requirement. So school districts that decide that this is a route they want to take for one of their classrooms or multiple classrooms can do that. And it also asks the practitioners from those 28 districts that are already putting these principles into place to come up with a model for lesson planning, a model for student assessments, a model for professional development, so that each district does not have to go back every time and use their own resources to come up with some of these tools that they'll need in order for them to get their students ready for today's economy. Now, once a month, and I'm sure many of you do the same thing, once a month, legislators in Linn County get together and meet with different stakeholders in our education system, teachers, parents, obviously a lot of them are parents, school board members, administrators, and talk about issues facing education. And the blueprint and the education reform proposal has obviously been a hot topic at a lot of those discussions. We spent hours on the subject talking about individual pieces. And a couple of months ago, Representative Willems, at the end of a long discussion, threw out the question, what in this bill or what in this proposal is transformative? What takes a school system that was designed 100 years ago for a totally different world and starts moving it to address the challenges that students face today? And the consensus among the folks at that table really focused on this individualized learning plan, individualized assessment, competency-based assessments to match kids and to teach kids the skills that they're going to need today. We need that transformational change around the answer to that key question. What do we want our kids to learn, and what do we need our kids to learn? And I really think it gets to creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, innovation. Things that we need to get a collaborative approach to and really change our system around. I don't think it's enough to improve our current system designed 100 years ago and ignore the changing reality that kids face when they leave school today. And I think it's actually dangerous to cement in the current one-size-fits-all system by doubling down on standardized pacing, standardized testing, standardized timing, all kids in at the same point, through at the same pace, learning in exactly the same way. This amendment, I think, begins that process of answering that question of what our students need to know today, what they want to know today, and I'm happy to answer your questions.